Voters in Burundi are casting ballots in a referendum that could extend President Pierre Nkurunziza's hold on power until 2034. We are close to eliminating polio, but some parents won't vaccinate their children against measles. We'll find out why. And a New York school combines tech and dance to boost interest in engineering. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. We'll have those stories in a moment. But first, there is a major development in the outbreak of Ebola in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The disease has spread to a large city, raising fears of a new epidemic of the deadly virus. A total of 44 confirmed, probable or suspected cases of Ebola have been reported since the outbreak was first detected, including at least 23 deaths. The new case has been confirmed in one of 3 health zones in Mbandaka, a city of more than 1 million people in the northwestern province of Equator. Mbandaka is located about 150 kilometers from the rural area of Bikoro, where the outbreak was detected earlier this month. The WHO says it is deploying about 30 experts to conduct surveillance in the city. An initial batch of 4,000 experimental Ebola vaccines arrived Wednesday in the capital, Kinshasa. The UN World Health Organization is set to convene an emergency committee on Friday to consider the international risks of an Ebola outbreak. The expert committee will decide whether to declare a public health emergency of international concern, which would trigger more international involvement, including mobilizing research and resources. Well, a team of Ebola experts left the U.S. Wednesday to visit Congo's rural northwest to help prevent its spread. VOA's Carol Pearson reports on what's different about the outbreak in Congo and the epidemic that swept through West Africa 4 years ago.
The first batch of experimental Ebola vaccines arrived in the Democratic Republic of Congo on May 16th. But there are few similarities between the current Ebola outbreak in Congo and the outbreak that ravaged West Africa for 2 years, from 2014 to 2016. One major difference is that there is now an experimental vaccine. While the vaccine was developed during the West African outbreak, it has proven to be safe and effective.
Merck, the vaccine manufacturer, has reassured WHO that we have access to further doses of vaccine as necessary during the outbreak.
The Health Ministry plans to start vaccinating those exposed to the virus in the next few days. Isolation units to treat the sick are already in place. And even though the outbreak is in a remote rural area, no one involved is taking anything for granted.
We are very concerned and we are planning for all scenarios, including the worst case scenario.
The head of the World Health Organization has visited the country, and the government of Congo has agreed to cooperate.
I thought it was very commendable and a great sign of the change of outlook that Dr. Tedros himself was personally there, and that was very important. It rallies the troops, it shows determination and commitment and speed.
The WHO has reorganized since the devastating outbreak in West Africa that killed more than 11,000 people. A lot of lessons were learned from that epidemic.
The response to this outbreak has been quite different from the very delayed response over a 6-month period in 2014 in the outbreak in West Africa. It's the 9th outbreak in Congo. This is a country that has a lot of experience in dealing with outbreaks of Ebola.
While the fear is that the outbreak could travel to major cities, as it did in West Africa, systems are already in place to make sure that, if at all possible, it doesn't. Carol Pearson, VOA News, Washington.
Well, not too far from Congo, voters in Burundi are casting ballots in a referendum on Thursday that could extend President Pierre Nkurunziza's hold on power until 2034. Now, scores of people waited in long lines Thursday outside polling stations in Bujumbura and across the impoverished nation to vote in the constitutional referendum. The current presidential term is 5-year terms, but a new amendment would give Nkurunziza a 7-year mandate. He was elected to a third 5-year term in 2015, breaking the 2-term limit enshrined in a peaceful deal struck in 2000 that ended a long civil war. Now, for the latest on the Burundi vote, reporter Mohamed Yusuf joins us by phone from Bujumbura. Good evening, Mohamed.
Good evening, Vincent.
Yes, so first, how would you describe the process? How did it go down today?
Yeah, I think polling stations opened around 6 and people started trickling in to cast their ballots. It was like any other normal election that you will see people queuing, giving their voters identification cards and being checked whether they're in the register or not, given a single paper that has a yes or no, and later dropping it in a ballot box. That is a general things that we have seen on the ground today in the process itself. But again, this whole referendum is happening behind in a situation where many human rights organizations have questioned the environment that is being conducted, and they're not happy with the way it's being conducted. They're not happy with the whole process. But again, by the look of it, it was just like any other election that is taking place in a country.
Now, we know that there were concerns before today that there could be violence, there could be intimidation in some other parts of the country. Did you witness anything that could come closer to intimidation or violence?
There were no violence in some of the polling stations that we visited, but some voters complained and they were saying that there were some youths who were intimidating them on their way to the polling station, telling them to vote yes, to vote yes. If they want, they will see they will be attacked or something like that. But again, that's the only thing we've had so far. But so far, it's been a very quiet day in Burundi, and everything seems to have gone very smoothly, apart from a few intimidations here and there that some voters told us.
Well, the process is over now. What next? What are you hearing? What follows?
Now, I think everything from the Burundi civilians' perspective, voters, they've done their part. Now everything goes to the Electoral Commission. They'll start counting as we speak. They've started counting as we speak. So the process will go on. They'll be counting. They'll release results from each polling stations, and that will go to the center. And the Electoral Commission will be announcing this, should be announcing this result in the next 2 days, probably on Saturday. But again, if this referendum passes, most probably it will be implemented as soon as it can. I think the ruling CNDD and the FDD party were really willing to do that quickly, because even the campaign itself of the referendum, they just took it 14 days. So you can see the urgency that they have. If it's passed, then they're going to do away with the Arusha Agreement and the other constitution.
Very, very quickly, do you hear people saying that Mr. Nkurunziza has done so much for the country that he deserves to be there until 2034?
Not really. From the people perspective, because the whole Burundians are talking of peace and stability. That's all we need. And clearly, when they tell you that, then it means that they haven't enjoyed what they were supposed to enjoy after Arusha Agreement in 2000 and even 2005, the constitution that was passed. Clearly, they're still complaining of insecurity, and that's all they need at the moment.
Well, Mohamed, thank you very much for your reporting. Mohamed Yusuf reporting from Bujumbura in Burundi. Now, a deadly apartment fire in New York City claimed 13 lives at the end of last year. But the death toll could have been higher were it not for the heroic actions of a 26-year-old Ghanaian immigrant who lost his life while saving others. VOA Salam Solomon reports from New York.
It was the deadliest fire in 27 years. 13 people were killed, including a 7-month-old baby. But as the mourning continues for the lives lost last December, New York officials have hailed the actions of a Ghanaian immigrant who died saving lives. Private first class in the U.S. National Guard, Emmanuel Mensah lived on the 3rd floor of the Bronx building, which caught fire when a 3-year-old played with the knobs of a stove. After making sure the people he lived with escaped, Mensah returned again and again to the burning building, bringing out 4 people. He was later discovered on the 4th floor, having died from smoke inhalation.
If I'm here and I see fire, I'll be running like hell. I'll be running away, and the people were running away. But for him to have that courage and get people out, comes first, went back again in the fire, and then went back again, back and forth. Then you can pinpoint that kind of nature he is. I don't have to say all this and say, oh, my son is good. You can say that. You can say it for yourself.
Mensah, a newly naturalized American citizen, immigrated to the U.S. to live with his father. His mother had died in childbirth in Accra, Ghana. He had an interest in engineering and computers, but he found meaning in helping others and had dreams of becoming a police officer. In 2016, he joined the National Guard. Staff Sergeant Ruben Martinez Ortiz was Mensah's recruiting officer.
He was definitely what any, I would want to serve with somebody like Emmanuel Mensah, you know? There's people that join the military for, for whatever reasons and stuff like that, but then you know who you'd want to serve next to. And he was definitely one person that I would have wanted to serve next to. He was a soldier.
Mensah touched many lives, including Margot Perkins, a neighbor who lives adjacent to the building that caught fire.
You know, when I think about him, I talk to him in my mind because I feel like he's still around. He used to call me Mom. Whenever I needed something done, he always did it. He's a good angel.
Mensah's father hopes his son isn't forgotten. To be known for acts of selflessness and bravery, he said, is the hallmark of a life with meaning.
His legacy is something that I cherish a lot. That makes me feel he came to this world to do what he did. And once and for all, he did what he's supposed to do. And he's out of this world. And sooner or later, I will Lord for them. But he has to be remembered as a hero.
Mensah had planned to continue his training and join the military police. He became a U.S. citizen in September, and although his life was lost, he would live on. This year, New York will officially rename the street corner where the fire took place after him.
Well, VOA Salam Solomon now joins me in studio to tell us more about the heroic Ghanaian immigrant. Salam, welcome back to Africa 54.
Thanks for having me.
So first, just kind of remind us, was this young man in the building when the fire started?
Yes, he was sleeping in the third floor when this happened, but he went back again, re-entered again and again, and saved, according to reports, 4 people.
Yeah.
And, a testament to his selflessness. When I went to visit the father and he let us in his home, in his apartment, I saw a mask, a gas mask. I believe it's from his military training, I'm not sure. But he was so focused on helping people, and he went back and forth, that he didn't think about taking that. So it shows that he was such a selfless person, and we learned later on that the cause of his death is smoke inhalation. That could have potentially saved his life.
Mm-hmm. And now we saw the father there. You can see he is really, he really treasures the memories of this young man. But how's the family doing beyond the father and beyond what we see on camera?
The family is struggling. His siblings, his sister was not processing it very well. And from the extended conversation I had with his father, according to him, he said he feels stuck since the death of Emmanuel Mensah. His father, Kwabena Mensah, is a taxi driver, immigrants, working class immigrants living in these apartments. He, because he died out of, not in the line of duty, but off, and they struggled, and they're raising funds to, do the service for Emmanuel, but they've been struggling. And shortly after that, his grandmother died in Accra, Ghana, and so the father will be flying in July to honor her. But it's been very difficult for the family. In fact, when I went to visit the cemetery, where his cemetery, there was no tombstone, so they're struggling to cope with this.
Must be really tough. Now, what next? We hear there is a naming of a street after Emmanuel. What do we know in terms of when and what's going to happen?
So the city is naming the street where this happened. The Bronx Councilman Rich Torres committed in January that they're going to name the 187th Street and Prospect Avenue where the accident happened to honor him. And the family is trying to rebuild, and they're trying to, rebuild and trying to cope with this. But I think his legacy and what Emmanuel embodies is, from the conversation I've had with his recruiter, a lot of African immigrants join the military. And he's the embodiment of how African immigrants who are joining the military sacrifice their lives in line of duty and off, as Emmanuel's story shows.
What a sacrifice this was for a young man. Thank you very much for going up to New York and bringing us this story.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate it. Wow. Health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with some news on vaccinations. Lino.
That's right, Vincent. Vaccines can prevent 23 different viruses and 2 types of cancer, and more vaccines are in the works, including one for HIV, the virus that causes AIDS. Yet, despite these advances, many people choose to avoid getting this vaccination for themselves and for their children. Here is again Voice of America's Carol Pearson.
Health workers are desperately trying to get each and every child vaccinated against polio, so no child will ever again suffer the crippling effects of this disease. There are other diseases that could be eliminated as well, including measles. But even though there is a highly effective measles vaccine, not all children are getting it. In Western countries, it's largely because parents choose not to vaccinate their children.
There's no year that's gone by, at least in my history at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, we do not see a child suffer and die from a vaccine-preventable disease, and invariably it's because the parents made that choice.
Last year, more than 14,000 people caught measles in Europe. Romania had the most cases.
We cannot fight this disease if we do not increase vaccination coverage. This is the first step that we have to start with. But we also have to understand why vaccination coverage is going down.
Many health officials say vaccines are victims of their own success.
For my parents, who were children of in the 20s and 30s, they saw diphtheria as a routine killer of teenagers. They saw polio as a common crippler of children and young adults, so that you didn't have to convince them to vaccinate me, my brother, and sister.
A new study suggests that in the United States, vaccine refusal is contagious. It spreads from communities with a high number of refusals to those nearby.
Collectively, there's factors driving vaccine refusal and delay.
Some parents believe misinformation they read online about the false connection between vaccines and autism, despite studies that show no connection. They then spread this misinformation to other parents, and they stop fearing the disease.
And when they don't fear that, then what they'll fear is they'll fear the vaccines, and I think that's where we're at.
Laws have tightened in some places. California no longer allows children to be exempt from getting vaccinations except for medical reasons. In Australia, the government provides free HPV vaccines to all young girls. HPV causes cervical cancer, the second most common type of cancer in women worldwide. 20 to 30 years from now, Australia may see sharp declines in these cancers because of government policy and an effective vaccine. Carol Pearson, VOA News, Washington.
Now, the U.S. President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, PEPFAR, was launched 15 years ago to address the AIDS epidemic around the world. When PEPFAR began, only 50,000 people in Africa were on life-saving HIV treatment. PEPFAR's 15th anniversary report shows that as of September 2017, more than 13 million men, women, and children are on HIV treatment worldwide. PEPFAR has enabled more than 2 million babies to be born HIV-free to HIV-positive mothers. One such mother is our studio guest, Babalwa Mbono, who was diagnosed with HIV while pregnant, but received treatment to prevent transmission of the virus to her child, thanks to the organization Mothers to Mothers. Babalwa is now a trainer with Mothers to Mothers in Pretoria, South Africa. Babalwa, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleased to meet you.
So tell us about your experience briefly as you were pregnant and then discovered that you were infected with the virus. What was it like navigating through the health system to get care?
Those days when you were HIV positive, it was so difficult because nurses and doctors don't have enough time to have time with you as a client to talk to you and get more information. So I was introduced to Mothers, a mentor mother who was able to take me through the program and educate me more about HIV, which makes me feel much more better and calm. Remember, when you heard the news, you become so shocked and you become angry, and it was a lot of things that were in my mind, thinking of my baby could be infected, I could die. So due to that, I was able now to live longer life, as you can see, helping, advocating for other women to get treatment and take care of themselves.
So now you went from being a client, if you will, to now providing services, training other women. Tell us about the type of impact you have seen over the years through the program.
We acknowledge the program PEPFAR that has brought to us, supporting our program. The impact is much more better. Remember, previously people didn't have any information. Now people know about HIV. People can easily disclose to their families. Stigma and discrimination has been reduced. People are taking their treatment as they are supposed to. So we see good results as mothers that we are enrolling are having healthy HIV-free negative babies. And also those who are on treatment, babies that are HIV positive are also initiated on treatment.
So there have been a lot of progress made over the years, according to observers, that in the fight against HIV/AIDS, and some of them you mentioned. However, there are still challenges that remain. Can you tell us, as someone who is directly in touch with the community, what are some of the challenges that you observe on a daily basis?
As we know that HIV is an epidemic that is so largely affecting our people. So we still need more resources, we still need more support to be able to reach out to those people that still need our support, that still need to be supported and educated and help them to prevent them to contract HIV, most especially our adolescent and young girls. Remember, we managed to save babies, 2 million babies from being HIV positive, and now these babies are grown up and they become adolescent and become teenagers. So we still have a role to play to make sure that those girls stays negative, and those that unfortunately became positive, we support them by making sure that they are on care and treatment.
So what is the message to help these young women stay HIV negative? They seem to be so vulnerable to the pandemic, to the epidemic.
Yes, due to the circumstances and how they live, or the conditions that our people live, most especially in Sub-Sahara, where poverty is the most one, a risk factor that contribute to those vulnerabilities. Would appreciate that those adolescent and young girls can be getting more support in terms of getting support on education, more awareness programs, HIV testing, that test and treat that need to be done, so that we're able to minimize the transmission of HIV to those girls.
What are your hopes for the future regarding the global fight against HIV/AIDS as an advocate, but also someone who is a patient?
As you can see, we are nearby to end the pandemic. So we hope that we'll continue the journey so that we're able to have free generation in 2030. As our strategic plan says that we are at 90 women, we want to see 90 people on treatment, 90 people on ART, 90 people on virally suppressed.
Okay, Babalwa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Safe return back to Pretoria.
Thank
Love
you
your
so
outfit,
much.
by the way. And Babalwa Mbono is a trainer with the Mothers to Mothers organization in Pretoria, South Africa. And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter at Lenormandou. Vincent, back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Lenona. Be sure to watch Lenormandou's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday on Africa 54. It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, what's the connection between tech and dance? We'll have the answer in a moment. Stay with us.
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Ebola outbreak reaches a patient in Mbandaka, a city of 1 million people, making it more difficult to contain. We stay in the DRC, where UNICEF's latest report says the conflict in the Kasai region has left some 2.3 million children in desperate need of humanitarian assistance. In Burundi, voters cast ballots in a referendum that could extend President Pierre Nkurunziza's hold on power until 2034. In Senegal, students and security forces clash at Cheikh Anta Diop University for a second day, a day after a student was killed during protest over unpaid grants. Finally, in Kenya, a memorial service is held in Solai to remember the 45 victims of flooding caused by the collapse of an illegal dam on a commercial farm.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. Robotic arms, powered gloves, and a new currency. They're all part of day one of the Cubatech Fair in Berlin. This glove that incorporates a QR code scanner that can be triggered by the push of the fingers, allowing workers to keep their hands free, but at the same time be able to scan codes faster. The device is mostly made for industrial use, where workers might need to scan codes on parts up to 1,000 times per day. The annual event aims to bring tech startup companies together with large corporations. Well, next up, how smart do you want your phone to be? Honor's new flagship smartphone uses artificial intelligence to recognize over 500 different scenarios. The new camera-focused Honor 10 device boasts advanced AI 2.0 technology. This, the company claims, enables its dual cameras to recognize its subject matter and adjust the picture accordingly. It can even recognize multiple objects in the same shot, such as a person, an animal, and the green fields behind them. The company, headquartered in Shenzhen, China, is the #3 global seller of smartphones behind Samsung and Apple. Well, and finally, an all-girl public school in New York engages its students to go into the fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics by fusing the disciplines with dance. The Young Women's Leadership School of Astoria's Andrea Chavez says it was her goal to get as many students as possible interested in the fields of science and technology. She came up with the concept of digital dance, which pairs student dancers with coders to create a multimedia extravaganza with more than 70 participating students this year. The show uses rover robots, dancers on hoverboards, and blinking ghosts from Pac-Man, all coded to sync with music and dance by students between 11 and 17. And that's what is trending today. Well, and that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com for more news. Tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us here in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. A lot of American English idioms refer to parts of the body.
Get off on the wrong foot.
Are Anna and Jonathan having trouble learning a dance?
How did it go meeting your girlfriend's family?
Well, it was interesting. First, I was really late.
Oh, Jonathan.
Yeah, and then at dinner, I spilled my water all over.